Hi, my name is Mark Tognotti. My project is creating the Mukungule Community Nature Conservancy. 10 tribal villages are creating the first nature conservancy in Zambia, fully initiated, owned, and operated by indigenous peoples to protect wildlife and ecosystems, conduct research, develop sustainable enterprises, and build pride in traditional culture. The tribal lands are located at the edge of North Luangwa National Park, one of the most remote and most intact wilderness areas remaining in all of Africa. The indigenous villagers are among the most marginalized people on Earth. Overlooked, exploited, abused by governments, extractive industries, and even environmentalists. The national park used to be their home. But as part of creating the park, they were kicked out of this place where they had lived sustainably for generations and moved to the periphery where they are today. Such displacement of native peoples is the dark secret of nature conservation for the last 125 years. My partner in this project is Hammer Simwinga, an indigenous man. In 2007, he won the Goldman Environmental Prize, the world's largest environmental award, for mobilizing villagers to eliminate devastating illegal wildlife hunting. In 2012, the Zambian government took vast tracts of wilderness land from the local tribes and started to auction them off as farm blocks, a disaster for wildlife and for native people. But Hammer conceived the idea to buy back some of this land to create the conservancy. The Tikva Grassroots Empowerment Fund gave him $40,000. With that, he bought nearly 20 square miles of wilderness. In 2013, Tikva sent me to work with Hammer in Zambia. I'm a facilitator. I organize really large multi-stakeholder groups to take system-level approaches to complex issues. Hammer and I put our heads together. We decided there was one perception on which almost everybody agreed. Mainstream society had all the power and resources. The indigenous tribal people had nothing. We decided to change that perception. We took two strategies. One, our approach to the indigenous villagers, and the other, our plan to bring modern society and indigenous people into a new kind of dialogue. Our approach to the indigenous villagers: instead of focusing on their poverty and offering to help, we went to some of the poorest people on Earth and we asked them, what do you have to give to others? It turns out, a lot. Meet the Linsolyam Fumu, the eye of the chief. On an 8-hour walk, he took me across conservancy lands and showed me stuff I'd never seen. He is a profoundly skilled animal tracker, an arborist who knows the uses of all the local trees. He's an expert in forest foods. He knows countless medicinal plants and what they cure. And he sees the local land and its people as one sacred, interconnected system. And yet he is called uneducated. In every Zambian village, there's a thatch roofed structure. It's called the Insaka. In old days, before British schooling, the whole village with the elders used to gather in the Insaka to share learning and pass on cultural wisdom. With the Conservancy, we are recreating the Insaka in a new form. We call it Insaka University, founded on indigenous knowledge. To create our initial departments, 100 villagers, more, self-organized into 9 action research and enterprise teams. Forest management, beekeeping, water harvesting, and others. Each of these teams will research indigenous ways, shape its own learning and action plan, and develop sustainable products and services. The teams will also work with visiting scientific researchers and developers of appropriate technologies, like software on mobile devices. Of the teams, we said, Imiti ikula empanga. The small saplings will grow into a forest. So that takes me to the second part of our strategy. We reasoned if we're going to change the relationship between indigenous people and the whole mainstream Zambian society, we got to get that whole society into the room and create a new dynamic. So Hammer and I, we designed a 4-day innovative working conference to do just that. We created a multi-stakeholder planning group that spent more than 2 years to identify and get the participation of influential people from all relevant stakeholder groups. Indigenous community members, their tribal leaders, national government, local government, the private sector, colleges and universities, environmental NGOs, and funders. Just last June, we finally held our conference. It was a tremendous success. 40 leaders from mainstream institutions met in close-up dialogue for almost 4 days with indigenous community members. Our goal, to get everybody to see the world through each other's eyes. We exceeded beyond our wildest hopes. At the end of the conference, all 80 stakeholders expressed full support for the Conservancy, and they created agreements and action plans in 8 key areas. Some of those were community ownership, natural resource conservation, respect for local culture, self-led local development, and whole system stakeholder participation. The conference created an advisory council, a multi-stakeholder advisory council to carry forward the vision. We posted the 8 agreements on a long banner in both official English and the native language side by side. That was huge for the indigenous people. Everybody rushed to sign the document. Chief Mukungule was so happy. He awarded the Conservancy a waterfall, said to be one of the highest in Zambia, but not yet appearing on any maps. Back in the villages, we reported the outcomes. We posted the banner on an old grain shed, and the community swarmed the wall to add their signatures. Many rubbed the markers on their fingertips and signed with thumbprints. You can see the thumbprints. So now, we're moving forward. We're raising funds to move forward on many fronts. One spectacular outcome is Zambia Forestry College, a government institution, has agreed to partner with the Conservancy, completely indigenous owned, to develop its programs and business enterprises. Honey will be a strong profit center. Barefoot College has offered to train grandmothers to be solar engineers and bring electricity, solar electricity, into the villages. We were looking for $60,000 to do that. We're really interested to develop financial innovations that fit indigenous sharing culture, like community equity ownership shares. The villagers are preparing to host visitors, researchers, volunteers, and tourists. Open Heart Safari is already planning to bring the first tour group. The villagers are so excited, next July. Now, interest from other chiefdoms has been so strong that we've got a new vision. We're imagining a whole network of indigenous conservancies all across Zambia. And we're seeing the possibility of indigenous peoples taking a nationally recognized leadership role in environmental conservation and sustainable rural development. We have this dream that we talk about of growing the indigenous spirit into a proud giant that can walk side by side with the already giant spirit of modernity so they can learn from each other. We have a dream that through this partnership, we can actually begin to grow the wilderness again, reverse the legacy and environmental destruction. Our dream is that the indigenous people can help reestablish the sacred connection to nature and bring it to cities and urban people again. Thank you.